Night settled fully over Tenochtitlan. Within the palace, torchlight flickered against carved stone walls, casting long, shifting shadows across the chambers where Emperor Montezuma and Hernan Cortés continued their carefully measured exchange. The ceremonies had been grand, the gifts lavish beyond anything the Spaniards had imagined, and yet, as the evening drew toward its close, Montezuma had one final offering to present. With a subtle gesture, attendants entered the chamber. They were women of the palace, dressed in finely woven cotton garments reserved for nobility, adorned with delicate ornaments that spoke of status and refinement. Their presence was not abrupt, nor was it explained. It did not need to be. It was a gesture layered in meaning, hospitality, honor, alliance, and, perhaps, expectation. The women approached Cortés and his senior officers with calm composure, their movements deliberate, their expressions unreadable. For the Spaniards it was not unfamiliar. Cortés had encountered similar gestures before, symbols of welcome in lands newly entered, where customs differed but intentions often overlapped. But this moment was different, because here, within the heart of the empire, every gesture carried weight far beyond itself. Cortés understood that, and he also understood something else. His position, both strategic and personal, was delicate. His relationship with La Malinche had already set him apart from his men in subtle but important ways. She was more than an interpreter, more than an intermediary. She was essential. To alienate her, or to disrupt the fragile trust that had formed between them, would be a mistake he could not afford. So when the offering was made, Cortés responded with care. He inclined his head respectfully, accepted the gesture in principle, but declined it for himself. Politely, measured, without offense. "For my men," he said through translation, "your generosity is received with gratitude." And that was enough. His officers accepted the gift readily. The evening closed not with tension, but with a quiet understanding that both sides were still learning how to interpret one another, and neither fully succeeded. Morning came quickly. Light filtered into the palace, illuminating the courtyards and corridors with a calm that contrasted sharply with the undercurrents of the previous day. Breakfast was arranged with the same precision and care as everything else within Montezuma's domain. Servants moved quietly. Food was presented in abundance, and once again Montezuma and Cortés sat across from one another. But something had changed. The tone, the direction, the focus. Where the previous day had been filled with discussions of culture, belief, and custom, today the conversation was different. Cortés did not circle the subject. He did not disguise his interest. Instead, he asked directly. "Your ornaments," he said, gesturing subtly toward the finely crafted pieces adorning the room. "The material they are made of, where might we find more of it?" The question lingered in the air. Montezuma regarded him carefully. Curiosity flickered beneath his composed exterior. "What of it?" he asked. "Why is this metal so important to you?" It was not an accusation, not yet, but it was a question that sought truth beneath politeness. Cortés answered without hesitation. "We suffer from a disease of the heart," he said. There was a pause as the words were translated. "A disease," he continued, "that can only be cured with gold." The phrasing was unusual, almost poetic, but the meaning was unmistakable. For the Spaniards, gold was not symbolic, it was purpose. Montezuma listened and interpreted, not as a simple statement of greed, but through the lens he had already begun to construct. If this man, this figure who had arrived from across the sea, spoke of such a need, then perhaps he was not merely human. Perhaps he was something more, something divine. And so, rather than resist the request, He responded by giving more. Gold was brought forth, objects, ornaments, offerings drawn from what was readily available within the palace. To Montezuma, it was a gesture of understanding. To Cortés, it was confirmation. As these discussions continued within the inner chambers, the palace courtyard began to fill. Late morning brought activity, guards shifting posts, servants carrying supplies, visitors passing through under watchful eyes. Among them, Yautl and Guadalupe. They entered without ceremony, but not without purpose. Yautl moved with familiarity through the space, his awareness sharp, his posture disciplined. Beside him, Guadalupe remained composed, though her attention moved constantly, searching, observing. Tizoc was nowhere to be seen, but that did not concern Yautl. "He is here," he said quietly, "somewhere." He turned to Guadalupe. "Wait here," he instructed. "I will find him. Then we decide how to proceed." Guadalupe nodded. She did not question him. Instead, she moved toward a centrally located bench within the courtyard and sat. From there, she could see everything. Entrances, movements, faces, and so she waited. It did not take long. No more than 5 minutes passed before the moment she had come for began to unfold. From one of the palace entrances, a small group emerged, Spanish soldiers, armed, alert, and among them, her, La Malinche. She walked with composure, her presence balanced between two worlds, not fully belonging to either. At first, she did not notice Guadalupe. Her attention was elsewhere, focused on her surroundings, her escorts, her role. But Guadalupe stood, stepped forward, made herself visible. And then, their eyes met. Recognition came instantly, shock, then something deeper, something older. La Malinche stopped. For a fraction of a moment, everything else seemed to fall away. Then she moved, quickly, closing the distance between the two of them. Guadalupe did the same. When they reached each other, neither spoke immediately. The silence itself carried meaning. Then La Malinche turned slightly to one of her guards. "It's all right," she said. "She's an old friend. Give us a moment." There was hesitation, then compliance. The guards stepped back, close enough to watch, but far enough to allow space and private conversation. La Malinche gestured toward a nearby bench. They sat, facing one another. "Guadalupe," La Malinche said, her voice softer now. "What are you doing here? When we last saw each other, you were going to Tlaxcala. How did you end up here?" Guadalupe exhaled slowly. "It wasn't by choice," she said. And then she told her about the raid, the Aztecs, the capture, the shift from one captivity to another, and finally, Yautl. "My husband," she said. She spoke of him without hesitation, of their life, of their child. "Nearly 2 years," she added quietly. La Malinche listened without interruption. Her expression revealed little, but her attention was complete. When Guadalupe finished, there was a pause. Then she asked the same in return. "And you?" La Malinche did not hesitate. She spoke of the coast and the Mayans, of Cortés's arrival, of Tabasco, of his victory, of alliances carefully built along the way. She spoke of Tlaxcala, first as enemy, then as ally, and then Cholula, their home. Guadalupe's gaze dropped. Her voice, when it came, was quieter. "So many thousands of innocent people murdered, and for what purpose?" The question was not rhetorical. It demanded something. La Malinche responded firmly and without emotion. The massacre at Cholula happened because its leaders were once again stupid enough to believe the lies they were told by a supposed ally in Montezuma. They were too weak to resist a pending threat in Tlaxcala and Spain, and last, but most certainly not least, I was left alive several years ago to connect the dots and help make sure that event took place exactly as it did. Silence followed, heavy, unforgiving. Guadalupe lifted her head slowly. There was no disbelief in her expression, only confirmation. Because somewhere within her, she had already known, or at least suspected. She had imagined scenarios, miscommunication, manipulation, a word added, a warning given at the right moment, and now she understood. La Malinche had not been a passive participant. She had been instrumental, deliberate. "You told Cortés," Guadalupe said quietly, "about the threat." La Malinche nodded once. "I did." A pause. "I fulfilled my promise." The vengeance she had spoken of years ago, it had come to pass. But as Guadalupe sat there looking at her, she realized something else, something she had not fully grasped until that moment. It had not ended that day in Cholula, because the woman before her was not finished, not even close. La Malinche leaned forward slightly, her voice lowered. "There is more to come," she said, not as a warning, not as a threat, but as fact. "I watched Cortés give the order to burn his ships several months ago. He and this army have no means of retreat or escape, even if they wanted to. The empire you stand in," La Malinche continued, "it will not remain as it is. Everything is about to change." "And you?" Guadalupe asked. La Malinche met her eyes. "I will be where I need to be." The answer was simple but thoroughly answered her question. Guadalupe leaned back slightly. Her thoughts moved quickly now, faster than she could fully control. For the first time since arriving in Tenochtitlan, Guadalupe felt something she had not allowed herself to feel before. Because now she knew. Future events set to unfold were unlikely to be about victory, the exchange of property, enslavement, or perhaps even a few sacrificed men to appease the gods. Things were setting up to be about survival. Whether or not civilizations of people, in some cases having existed for hundreds and even thousands of years, would cease to exist, and whether anyone could stop it.